organizing this wonderful panel. Mahmoud, it's a great honor and a sign of trust, and it's very humbling, this task to speak about the work of such a dear friend, but mostly such a pioneering and towering figure in the field. We've worked together since almost a decade, but you've been a mentor, a role model, a moral compass, an inspiration. I learn every day from your calm, the rigor of your work, the passion and care you put in it. Our work intersects in many areas, many discussions. Mostly, I think we met around our work on Orientalism and Edward Said. And then we moved on to sharing conversations around the Arab revolutions. And lately, we've been sharing conversations around the issues of so-called counter-radicalization policies and the racialization dynamics that these policies carry. Mahmoud has played a key role, not just in the critique and the countering of Orientalist and culturalist and essentialist accounts of IR and of the Arab politics, but he has played a major foundational role in actually articulating an alternative framework of analysis, thinking beyond the boundaries of area studies, beyond the boundaries of disciplines, but always with a commitment to history and to context. And I think in today's context, this commitment to history is a radical act of subversion. Mahmoud's relentless commitment to showing the post-colonial effects of international inequalities helps not only to elucidate the phenomenon he's studying, but to actually open up alternatives to think about the conditions for decolonizing social sciences and IR. In his books, from his first book examining the Western intervention in Iraq to his triptych Contre-Croisade, Understanding Al-Qaeda and Theory of ISIS, he developed foundational thought about IR beyond the West, which I interpret mostly as a way of thinking of IR beyond the normative understandings of the liberal secular state. When most books around these issues, around issues of radicalization and terrorism, still continue to naturalize the liberal secular state as that phenomenon that will not be interrogated, Mahmoud's work on political violence is a work as much on political violence as a work on states against the domination of narratives that are informed by journalistic expert approaches that love neologisms that Mahmoud dislikes so much, such as jihadists and so on and so forth. He puts forward a relational approach to anti-state violence. The key question for him is not how do terrorists operate, but what do they react to? And the focus of his study is on that against, again, all the studies that naturalize the state as that black box that should not be interrogated. Through work that is committed to a historical perspective against presentism, as I mentioned, but also through a comparative lens, he refuses to take the North or the West as the global standard against which political violence should be understood. And he proposes, among other many compelling definitions of political violence, the following one: political violence as, I quote, a projection of dystrophies of societal frustration and of situations of dissatisfaction. A definition that brings us far away from all the culturalist understandings of of political violence. And he always, as I mentioned, reminds us of the sort of histories behind geographies and refuses these easy categorization between distinct area and cultural areas. More specifically, as far as I'm concerned, one area in which Mahmoud's work has been so needed and so inspiring for me is his much needed critique of transitology and transition theory. As I was trying to make sense of the Arab revolutions, especially in the context of the Tunisian democratization, his ruthless but so needed critique of transition theory and the easiness of some linear understanding and normative understanding of how a democratic transition should operate has been been extremely helpful for, I think, most scholars of the Arab world who are committed to a thorough understanding of the democratic process in the region. I've been also and remain constantly inspired by his analysis of citizenship in the Arab world, that he and his understanding of citizenship and political subjectivity in these regions as the model for the West and how citizenship in the West should unfold. And I'm always impressed at how he reverses the normative relationship of power, whereby usually the West, whatever that means, is understood and shown and demonstrated as the place where from which apprentice citizens in the global South, and in particular in the Arab world, should learn from. He inverts that dynamic and actually shows that the most original, most dynamic formations of citizenship right now are happening in countries that are often dismissed. More recently, we have collaborated on research around the highly sensitive themes of radicalization and preventing violent extremism. And here again, Mahmoud's scholarship has been absolutely groundbreaking in helping to articulate the critique of the culturalism that is very much at play in this discussion, notably around the so-called role of religion of Islam in violent extremism. Mahmoud's work has played a key role in showing the autonomy of the actors, the political actors who engage in violent extremism. And Mahmoud shows that these actors are engaging in something that is political violence, which means violence, yes, but political nonetheless. It is this political that is often omitted in understanding that are mostly pathologizing or exceptionalizing of these type of behavior. I also find that there is an aspect of Mahmoud's work that is emerging in all his books and writings that maybe hasn't been talked about much, but I found particularly compelling, which is the sort of philosophical underpinning of his work. And I find some kind of melancholic philosophy underlying most of his writings, and I hope that someday he will write maybe a book that brings together all this melancholic ontology that underlies his book, and especially in your recent writings around the connection between global security geopolitics and the post-corona world, and your work on the unpredictability of these processes and your remarks around the rapprochement between fiction and real. And here I know that you, as an avid reader of novels and cinema and culture, I want to quote something you wrote, I think a year ago. Today, we are living in an epoch in which the space between materiality and immateriality is shrinking. And so an entity like Islamic State is absolutely an entity of its epoch. I found that there are profound philosophical underpinnings in this type of comments, and I look forward to reading the sequel to that comment. I want to conclude by again saying how inspiring your work has been and remains to be for me, but also you as a human, as a scholar, as a scholar who's assertive and determined, but also someone who's perplexed and wondering and open to new understandings, and who's not just narrow-mindedly fixated on your own certitudes. I admire and learn from the patient colleague, always dignified, disciplined, efficient, with so much class and elegance. When they go low, we go high. This is your motto, no doubt about that. I admire the proud dad who a week ago sent me the wonderful essay written by his daughter, and who gave me maybe one of the most helpful advice, which is that it's always, he never regretted finishing a draft for accompanying his son to a soccer game. And as a new mom, I've learned a lot from this type of advice. And I really learned from this mixture of, you have the kindness and patience of an MLK and the determination and rightful rage of an Malcolm X. You're a beautiful writer, an intimidatingly eloquent speaker, a most generous friend, and a human committed to your family, friends, and colleagues that I admire. And I thank you for making academia a more friendly and inspiring space for me.